Good morning, traders, and a happy Friday out there to you all, and happy last trading day of the year and trading day of the month. So, should be rather interesting to take that into account, but also good to note we are nice and light on the calendar here today. We do have just a PMI figure out at 9:45 Eastern, so we could take note of that, but outside of our PMI, we are in the clear from any major, data points here today. So, with that said, we can come over here and take into account some of our daily charts. As we well know, yesterday we kept it nice and narrow as far as the daily range goes. Putting in another NR7, narrow range of the past 7 trading days. We had back-to-back narrow ranges, so nothing wrong with that. We do have, our previous high that we, had broke out from or tested above there over the past 2 days, right? 48.30, 75. So just kind of hovering, around that region for now. And as we can see, our 5 SMA comes in just a little bit lower, and that comes in at 48.25 here today. So spending some time here, as we'll see in just a second, for the most part inside of our previous day's range there. So coming in the Globex session as an inside range bar. We do have the previous day's low that comes in at 48.28. So that could be an additional zone to keep in mind. And what I'll do here is just get that 28 marked off there for us, so we have that on the intraday data. As far as the 120-minute display goes, not too far off of the feeling of what we have going on with the daily charts. We came in overnight, so it's going to show up as a little shy on making the full retest up, hence the inside range bar, right, that we were left with. So for now, partial retest up, but couldn't quite fully get going, in which case, of course, this 48.28 should be a valid point of interest there, our previous day's low, and then any further down below, we'll have the 5 SMA and all kinds of host of data points here from our little bit of up channeling activity that we've had, recouping the damage that we had done to the downside. So it's taken us, quite a few days, 3 to 4 days to recoup some of the damage after the long liquidation flush. So in other words, even if we do come down and unwind, we've gone through all these little basing structures here. So plenty of data points along the way to, continue to monitor and keep in mind. So as far as the ES for now, it's kind of more or less what we're left with. Don't like to keep the charts too overly crowded. I would be interested if we started to, really move or get going here. 48.16 is an additional area, down below. So that would be another item to consider as far as the ES goes. But for now, inside range bar, we'll see how they handle the previous day's low. Should they reach down any further, that's more or less what we have going on here with the S&Ps, keeping it, mostly tame. We had a narrow range yesterday, and so far we have an inside range bar, so even, a little bit more tame than what we had there yesterday. Over here on the DAX side of the equation, we did close yesterday as a bit of a balanced mode, or 3 bar in the DAX, and we kind of started to look at how this daily configuration could start to shape up. This high that we have around that 17,000 mark, we have not been able to trade back above that point. So we're still working on a little digesting in the grand scheme of things daily. EMA continuing to rise up during this phase as well. And for the most part, DAX just really in a balancing act here. No further changes. Just like we have the 17,000 up above, we have the 16,795 down below. If we started to breach the 16,795, we would certainly be a lot closer towards that daily EMA, and that would also give us more of that feeling of the ABC type of wave in the DAX. So whilst today is the last day of the year and last day of the trading month, so the DAX very well might not get too far going, but should it breach, really either side of this bar here from the 20th of December, we'll see if that would generate some additional traction or legs there as far as the DAX future goes there. So for now, nice and contained though. Just building out some additional range from the overnight session, and we can kind of see these same zones here. This needs to be up a little bit higher for that 17,000 mark, but more or less we can see the same benchmarks here, same points from that bar from the 20th there, the same 16,795 and the 16,999 or 17,000 there as far as the DAX goes. So not bad, holding its own considering all else. Then we have our euro currency here as well, right? EC. For one, we have to blow this one up, but we'll kick it off here with the dailies for starters. So you don't need this lower metric here. So, yesterday we did make the higher high first, and then proceeded to work ourselves down. We'll look at the intraday charts in just a moment. We had a little loss of momentum, but either way we slice it, good extension down, so we came back. But where we started to trade back towards and didn't quite start to get back beneath it is the 1.107 even mark in the case of the euro currency. So that's going to be a nice level to keep in mind there for our EC. They did have a little bit of selling activity there, during yesterday's action towards the tail end. So shows up as just the fact that we're trading inside the bar from, past 2 days. We can see 1.107, not only previous cycle high, but also very close to the low from the trading done on the 27th. So that's where we are in the daily charts. As far as the intraday, such as the hourlies, we also know we were filling in a lot of structural work, right, from yesterday's action, from our nice impulse bar that we had to the upside. So we filled that out pretty quickly, right, a little loss of momentum, if you would, looking at our 60-minute chart, our oscillator, the feeling of shortening in the lengths of the swings or lower highs, whilst we had been making higher highs in the price. So unfolding, in a bit of a two-part wave, we filled in a lot of the blanks there. So any further down from here in the EC, we'd want to keep an eye there on the 1.107 mark, see if they can hold it up or want to rotate around that zone at all. But if we come back beneath it with good volume and good extension, that would be a greater cause for concern. But for now, coming down in a rather slow or constructive format there, so not horribly bad. And then we have this GC here. We're going to want to include a couple more data points here on this gold. Jumping out just a notch higher of a time frame out here to the 240-minute display. Blow this up just a notch here. So here with the gold for one on the daily display, right? Also, kind of like the EC, right? We made the higher high first, and then proceeded to back off just a notch. We traded close to, but not on the other side there of the 5 SMA here on the daily charts. For today's purposes, comes in at 2076. So in the Globex session, doing some mild work in that vicinity. And in here with the gold, as we, come down a notch, for one, dropping beneath 2080, and then any further down, was viewing this point here, this 2063, as being a zone here, simply because we had a reaction high in this area, and then we started to test it again before then, giving a little better acceleration. So should we work ourselves down, any further, we have basically 2080 and 2063 for some regions for the gold to perhaps play back and forth between there. So we'll keep our eyes on that rhythm there. For now, off the 8 a.m. reading, remains mostly tame there. So not any immediate reactions to be concerned with there as far as the gold goes. But certainly not half bad. And then next thought up, we have the crude here. The crude having 2 days of pretty heavy selling considering all else, right? So 2 days of high to low. It's not quite as substantial as when we were coming back above the point originally, after being down on the downside. The 72.53 was the original low that we had, from a little bit back there in the middle portions of November. So we took that out, and as we know, we traded a lot around that there over the past 2 weeks, and then we started to extend ourselves above it. So now we're coming back to the scene of the crime, if you would, and doing some play. A little bit of trading around the 72.53 as far as the crude goes. And what's nice to note here on the intraday is that we had this nice impulse down, right on the hourly charts or the 120-minute display. So nice selling activity. What we see unfolding overnight and into the end of the session there yesterday is more so of the sideways line as opposed to lifting up very much. As we can see here, we did have some good selling pressure, so not a whole lot of time spent in these regions. So this will look nice on the market profile display as well. But point being, we had impulse down and we've gone sideways as opposed to lifting very much. So, wanting to be a little cautious there with the crude there today, just in case we do end up, continuing on with this, bit of a rhythm. In which case, 71.40, 71 even are some areas down below. And if we get any type of, counter reactive lift or start to, trying to turn this back to the upside a notch, we'd have our low developed areas or single prints that loom up above. So those will give us points on both sides of the spectrum. Right, we have our 71.40, 71 even down below, and then all this above 72.30 is kind of a low developed region from yesterday's selling there in the crude. We'll shrink that again back up there. And then last but not least here we have our bonds, our 30 years, last day of the month for them. And as we'll certainly see here, we're trading. Oh, I need to scoot this chart over on the side here. So here with the bonds, right? I'm going to kick it off with the dailies first, right? So our nice impulse bar that we had to the upside, taking us 2 days to kind of go in there and digest that advancement. No trade above the high. We put it in at 125.30. So what's kind of neat to see here is that on the 120-minute display, as you'll see, similar concepts for some of these markets here. We did have a decent run-up in the bonds out of our prolonged 120-minute sideways line after having, good standard deviation mode to the upside, a little prolonged consolidation or digestion period. Then we proceeded to, make a nice breakout because that was also coming out of a 3-bar balance mode in an inside range bar. So good range expansion. However, still to this time here, we haven't seen a trade above the high of that impulse bar. So as opposed to taking out the high, we spent the past 2 days, kind of digesting some of that upside progress once again here in the bonds. So 124.23 essentially being like the top portion of this previous range that we, breached from or broke out from. I'm just kind of looking at it as being this little area here. So good extension. We worked ourselves back, and now we're just kind of rotating and holding a bit here at the upper end of this range. 124.10 to kind of 124.23 is kind of being the upper end of the region there as far as the bonds go. So with that said, we'll shrink this back down. We'll want to get this S&P loaded up. We'll leave the crude up as well, just to kind of see what the crude's going to have in store, and then we'll leave this 120-minute S&P display up, and we'll just see what we got lining up for the session in front of us. Another day where we don't want to, get too overly enthused, right? Last day of the month, so we'll take note of the volume and everything. But for now, we'll dial it to like a nice 30-minute display so we can see, the testing that we had during the overnight session, and plenty of room for our S&Ps to do some nice morning rotating. And then we'll have Damon on in about another 30 minutes. And as we can see, a couple of these markets will look quite nice there on the MP view, right? Our bonds, euro currency, the crude, all had some nice structural work that they put in there tonight.